I grew up in rural Wisconsin. I lived in the country.
Cheryl Leonard is one of many contemporary experimental musicians who have turned to the natural world, not just for inspiration, but for new ways of making sounds.
I do think the bark, especially because it's curled up into these tube-like things, probably has some good sound potential.
Cheryl is preparing for an upcoming performance of 5 new works entitled Ziran, a Chinese word meaning natural. Each piece is inspired by a different Chinese poem dating back to the Tang Dynasty.
For each poem, I would write a short piece that used only natural materials as instruments, and the choice of instruments, if you want to call them that, is determined by the subject matter of the poem. So if the poem is talking about mountains, then I have to play rocks. If the poem is talking about birds, I have to play feathers. These are too young. The ones that I have been playing with are a little bit older, and the petals have peeled open more, so you can actually do something like bow them. And these are still pretty closed. So I guess this would be more like a percussion instrument at this point. You can bow a pine cone, you can pluck it, you can drop little things on it. Like we drop pine needles, flower petals. I've actually been working with pine cones for a couple of years now, I mean, even before this piece. This is an excellent little baby pine cone. I'm calling it that because it plays really high pitches. It's young. It's just started to open its little petals. And you can hear, it would be our soprano pine cone, perhaps. That's it. Okay, remember, we're going for that sort of irritating, screechy sound.
Find it.
I think, were you bowing that side of it?
Cheryl has enlisted the help of her colleagues Ann Dentel and Patty Liu to perform at her upcoming concert. The sounds of the individual instruments will be amplified electronically, but not otherwise modified or distorted. All 3 women have extensive experience in musical composition and performance, but rehearsing and performing with natural instruments is still challenging.
You could just bang on rocks and it could sound like nothing. It's how you bang on the rocks that makes it musical or not. So I have to specify all these tiny details.
Instead of using a traditional score, Cheryl has created her own intricate system of notation.
The best thing I could come up with really was to write it out in text and try to specify like what time it ends, what time it begins. Sometimes there'll be little instructions.
Where the rocks start again, or do we just
You guys look
start
at each
together?
other. You know, play this rock, a little swell volume right after the swell that Patty plays. It takes a lot of focus because we're playing lots of instruments in one single piece. There are lots of cues, lots of things that have to be connected with the other players, and you just have to be super focused on what you're doing. And then also as the composer, I need to simultaneously be hearing the big picture, which is pretty hard, but I try to do it. We're done with this piece for today. Woo-woo. Rocks.
Holding the land's bright spring. Blossoms drip and drip and drip.
Tonight is the debut performance of Zoran, combining a live reading of the poems that inspired Cheryl with her musical performance. All of it in front of a packed audience inside a private studio south of Market Street in San Francisco.
It's a pretty nice setup for the audience. They get to lie on beanbag chairs and futons, and sure, sometimes people fall asleep, but it's pretty comfortable for really listening to things. I'm not sure if I have a number one favorite part of my composing, performing process. There are several parts that I'm very fond of. One is when you have a eureka moment. It's when I discover something that an instrument does that I had no idea it could do. When I'm just trying random crazy things. And you're like, oh my God, I'm bowing this twig and it sounds like a bass string. It's a special moment. And they're ephemeral. You don't get them very often, which is part of what makes them so special when they happen.